my friend Peter, who I met at one of my events, actually, at 235th, who does something very interesting with a company called Time Stories. Tell us, Peter, how do you memorialize people?
Well,
get right up to the microphone.
How do we memorialize people?
How do you? I don't mean this philosophically.
We create heritage documentaries and personal video biographies that honor families, individuals, and companies who want to preserve their legacy and their heritage.
Okay. And give us an example of a typical film. Like, what would this, how long would it be? And we'll, of course, talk pricing, which I know can be kind of like a vague subject, depending on what you want, but how long is the average movie you make for people?
Well, our typical client is usually a biography, and it's usually the senior member of a family, someone who one of their children might call me and say, my mother or my father is reaching a certain age, we'd like to collect their stories for the family. And so I meet with them initially to discuss what they'd like to do and how long the story might be, depending on what type of a life their family member has lived. Then second thing I do is meet the actual subject themselves to see how do they talk, how many photos and memorabilia do they have, any home movies, photographs, and so forth. And then we stage the third meeting, which is when we come in with the cameras and we interview them. We start with the questions about what they remember about their past, their childhood, growing up, school, work, marriage, children, their favorites, hobbies, and it can go on and on from that.
Now, I'm sure you get some people that are very easy to work with, but do you ever get anybody where it's like pulling teeth to get, something out of them?
It can start out that way. A lot of people are hesitant, especially those that have come through the war, World War II. But because I'm not,
you couldn't have shut my father up, I'll tell you that.
Well, and usually because I'm not a family member, they seem to be more willing to talk. And because someone who's come out of the family where there's no emotional connection, who's offered to listen, usually it is more of a case of trying to get them to stay on topic and finish a thought than it is to get anything out of them.
Okay, we're going to get back to all of this in detail, but we don't want to forget our other friend, Anthony, who I go way back with. And Anthony, I got to give our friend Grace a little credit. Grace, who suggested him. I don't know why I didn't think of it myself, because I was trying to come up with a pet-related memorial connection. And Anthony hosted a great event that I went to for his pal Bandit. So I want to tell us a little about Bandit and a little about that event.
Well, first, how you doing? How's everybody? I just wanted to say first, before anything else, because I'd like to pay some respect for those in the services that have served our country, who've given their lives, and those who continue to serve in the armed forces for our country so we could live the American way. I'd like to thank them personally, because we wouldn't have what we have right now going on and living this wonderful life. Bandit was my dog that was the muse and mascot and went on to help me form my company. And Bandit was one of the most awarded, most photographed, most popular dogs in the nation, but also internationally, because I found videos of him in Korea actually had been filmed.
He's kind of a Korea man.
Yeah. And what happened was that he passed away, and I was fine with closure with the fact that when first of all we rescued him, he was supposed to be he was given only a year to live. He was being beaten in the street when we found him. He was a small dog, a Chihuahua, and we saved him, rehabilitated him. The doctor had advised that maybe I should put him down because he had 2 broken ribs, and I refused to do so and decided to rehabilitate him, and I ended up having him for 8 years. That's how he got all the awards, and he did a lot of work with the animal shelters and rescues and all of that. And when he passed away, being that he had a large following, apparently when I had him cremated, I was going to do a small thing with the family, and then the emails started coming in, the word got out, and it was incredible. It was incredibly overwhelming, and people wanted to say goodbye from the community, and it just took a life of its own, and I just had to decide last minute to put something together. A friend of mine who owns a place called the Fetch Club down by the South Street Seaport, his name is Peter, was very kind and helped me to get a location at his place, secure the location for a particular day, and we did the invitations and got a lot of guests, and we had to limit the guests because we had so many. We put together a lot of things to do for that event, and we celebrated. We didn't mourn, we celebrated the life of the dog that was supposed to live only 1 year.
Yes, we're going to get back to more info on Bandit, because he had quite a career.
Oh, yes.
Quite a fashion plate.
Yes.
And, loved the camera. But we're going to hear about that event, but we want to get back to Peter a little bit here, because we don't want him to feel neglected. Now, when did you launch, Peter? When did this company get off the ground?
We began in 2006.
Okay, and how many films would you say you've made since then?
About 35 biographies, about 6-7 tributes, and a handful of kidographies, which are young biographies of children between the ages of 4 and 8 years old.
You were profiling their career?
Well, their eventual career.
Oh, okay. Who's better to work with, the kids or the old folks?
And it's a toss-up. I'd say the kids.
Okay.
The kids.
Now, you also said you did at least some sort of thing with a pet, right? I mean, I know we were talking before the show. More pictures, you said, I think?
Mostly photographs. Yeah, it was a photograph memorial of a cherished pet.
We got to get you hooked up with some pets, because I'm in the thick of the pet community in New York.
Fabulous.
Okay, we're going to work that out. But now, what did you do previously? How did you end up in this field?
For 25 years, I was an art director in television as a broadcast designer, creating graphics and show opens for the networks and cable networks, mostly ABC News, NBC Sports, the History Channel, the Discovery Channel. And I had gotten married late in life. My 5-year-old son approached me one day and asked me, who is this lady all around the house? Whose pictures are these? And it was my mother, his grandmother, who had died the year he was born. And so I said, well, it's my mom. What can I tell you? She's a nice lady. She loved me. She cooked meals. I said, no, there's got to be something more. How do I really let you into what I remember about her? So I pulled out a photo box and started going through them, and he'd say, who's that? And I said, I don't really know. And who's that? And what are they doing there? I don't really know. And I realized that all those years that my parents had been telling me their stories, I really wasn't interested. It wasn't current. It was old news, old stories. Why should I care? So I took out about 25 or 30 photos that I recognized of her, and had narrated the eulogy that I wrote for her funeral, and created a moving photo montage. So that talked about what I remembered and how I felt about her life. And my
photo montage, a French film, basically.
Well, I am French, so it was a French film.
Yeah, very good, very appropriate.
And my wife said, this is pretty good. You should consider doing something with this. Get my grandmother's story. She's 87. Why don't you practice on her? So I flew down to Louisiana and interviewed her, and it was one of the longest ones I'd ever done, because she liked to tell me her full story. And it started from there. I've moved out of broadcast design and into starting my own company. First it was called Heirloom Biography. It was just personal biographies. But then people started saying, can you do a tribute of my husband who's turned 50? Can you get my best friend who's retiring from a company? And I realized there's stories from all different ages, and there was no one category they fit in, so I put it under a new name, Time Stories.
Well, you said you have a young son. Is there a kidography in the making?
He was the first one. Right after I did my mother's montage, I turned the camera on him and said, questions like, why is the sky blue? Where does God live? What are you going to be when you grow up?
Did he know all that stuff?
Well, that's what's so great about children, is they think they know, and half of the answers are a little bit off, but that's what makes them so charming.
That could describe my father, except for the charming part, yes. Okay. And me, except for the charming part as well. Except I know I don't know anything. Okay. Now, we want to get back to Anthony, because I was a big fan of Bandit myself. We hung out.
Yeah, you got to meet him.
He was a little aloof, as many stars are, but he was quite the model. Now, you're a designer yourself.
Yes, I own the company. I'm the designer. I do couture creations for Bandit Rubio Designs, named after Bandit, and he was the muse, and it all started with a few little costumes here and there for events, and he got recognized, got picked up, got book covers, got in the Daily News and the New York Times. We were in the Today Show, several television shows, and he got his notoriety. And it was funny because everywhere I went, people would always say, "You're Bandit's owner," and they wouldn't remember my name. So I took on the name Bandit.
Okay, so the black mustache, calling yourself Bandit. I don't know if this is a good idea, but okay. So, all right. Now, obviously, it was rough losing him. How long did you have him?
I had him for 8 years. He was a tough character to rehabilitate because he was very stubborn and very territorial. And once the first year passed and he realized that he had trust in me, he pretty much gave himself in, and like I said, he went into the fashion industry. He was a travel companion. He went with me all over Europe. He's been to Vegas many times, all over the place, and he was very well recognized.
Do they let him play with those dark glasses on? Because they usually won't allow you at the tables.
No, they wouldn't allow him at the tables at all. He was a minor.
Yeah, because he had the dark glasses, the hat. He definitely had some style there.
Yeah, that was his persona. He was known for wearing the dark shades and usually some kind of a hat or something, and that was his character.
Now, with a dog like that who's dressed up pretty much all the time, did he have certain outfits that he preferred, or what?
Actually, he was pretty happy with a regular polo shirt. So,
okay.
But the funny thing is that you see, it's a $50 billion industry according to Forbes magazine, the pet industry. And what happened was that the time when I first started dressing Bandit, everybody would look and say, "Look, it's a dog with a shirt on, or it's a dog with glasses on," and it was such a big deal. 5 years later, if I took Bandit out without anything on, people would say, "Where are his clothing? You can't bring him out naked." And the other thing was that if you saw a dog without a coat on in the winter, people would say, "That's a shame." So it completely changed within the 5 years.
So Bandit kind of revolutionized the pet fashion industry. Is that fair to say?
I would say that.
Okay. So would he? I know that Janice Dickinson claims that she was the first supermodel. Would he be the first dog supermodel?
I wouldn't say that he was the first.
Did he ever come out and claim that? By the way?
He didn't come out and claim it, but he was one of the top celebrated dogs especially in New York.
Top dog.
Yeah, top dog. I would say that. Yeah.
One size fits small.
Very good. Okay. I told the bad jokes here, Peter. Okay. Well, back to you. Speaking of which, now you won some awards. Actually, I know they weren't for exactly the same thing, but some Emmys, I believe, which is pretty big stuff. Tell us about that.
Well, at the peak of my career, I was doing the right thing at the right time for the right people. And I was awarded 4 Emmy Awards for my efforts, along with about 6 Broadcast Designers Association Awards, a little less famous. But that has been, they're my bowling trophies on my shelf.
Now, how helpful was that in getting this business off the ground? Was that something that people were really impressed by? I mean, I know I wouldn't mind if the guy making a video of my grandpa had won some Emmys.
I can't see that it hurts. I don't exactly see it as a leveraging tool, I suppose. It does make me sound a little bit more than your cousin or your nephew Vincent, who's got a camera and he can shoot it himself. I mean, I do know what I'm doing, so it doesn't hurt.
And my nephew Vincent has shot it himself several times, by the way, so don't joke about that.
All right, no problem.
Okay. Now, how many people are involved in making one of these movies? Is this just you, or do you have a crew?
Well, I can ramp up if need be. I mean, I'm a solopreneur, but I do have camera people and editors and sound people and graphic designers if necessary, if I start getting busy enough. So that's what's good about it, is that I only need to pay for the overhead as per the client. If it's a small month, it's myself.
How often do you bring other folks in? And how many do you make a year, would you say? I know you said it's about 40 or something total since you've been doing this, right?
About 8 to 12. So it averages about, it can be 2 to 3 a month, and then nothing for a month or 2 while I'm getting, more clients, and then it comes back again.
Is there a busy time of year?
The holidays seem to come around. Mother's Day, Father's Day, but I'm finding that everyone has a birthday once a year, so the biographies tend to...
I try to skip mine. I just do leap years
Or
now.
do 2 at once and then skip a year. Right.
Yes.
I count backwards.
Do you? Okay. So you and Bandit are now the same age?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Now, okay. Do people tend to give these to themselves? Or more often, do they give them to their kids as a gift, or their kids give them to them? How does that work?
I wish there was a standard template for this. I don't think I've ever had 2 customers exactly the same. There's the client who hires me, and the client can also be the subject, or the client can hire me to get their parents or their friend, and they're the subject. The people, if I do a biography of an 85-year-old person, or pick an age, they don't need their story. They know their story. So it's more of an honorarium to them to say, we love love you, we respect what you did to get us to where we are, and me and my children want to have your story alive for generations to come. So it's a gift to the whole family, really.
What was the oldest person you've worked with?
87?
87?
No, 90. Mary Vogue was 90. Byron was 92, so no, 92. Yeah.
Somebody just wrote in, how long do they take to make?
It's actually pretty quick.
The people are 9 months, by the way, in case that was some confusion, but the film we're going to get to now.
It depends. I meet the person the first time, so that's an hour or so, and then I meet the subject maybe an hour or two just to see how comfortable they are talking, what they have, and then the actual interview is anywhere from 1 hour to 4 hours. And then we go away and do our magic. We do all the editing. We add photographs, their photographs. We do a lot of archival imagery we find on the internet and at the Library of Congress, period music, stock footage, and depending on how much they want to put in it, if they say I flew with a certain fighter battalion, we go find stock footage of that particular period and put it in the video.
Do you dig up people that they knew from back when and throw tidbits from them in there, like you would actually see on History Channel?
For the biographies, not usually. For the tributes, surely. I mean, I've done one where I interviewed 26 people for a surprise birthday party for a woman who was turning 40. Her husband said, I want the college kids, I want the old boyfriends, I want the brothers and sisters, the cousins, the nephews. So we will go out and interview all the people necessary to tell a story.
Now, how long is one of these films?
Well, again, for which? For a biography, they can tend to run 30 minutes for a short one, which is more about who, what, when, where. It's more factual. And when you start getting into more emotional things, like how did that feel, and they can go anywhere up to about 2 to 2.5 hours.
Okay, so...
But these are edited down, so they're very quick. They're like television, where it's no long, lengthy pauses. It's all the ums and ahs are cut out.
But you make a 2.5 hour film sometimes for these people, you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, now let's get down to pricing, because I know this is a touchy subject for some, but what do people pay for this? I know there's a range.
Right. Well, because people say that, they say, we don't want to spend as much as some other people might. I've tried to come with an introductory price. So I'd say they run somewhere between about $2,000 for just filming it and putting it back out without a lot of enhancement. And they've gone up to $25,000. But I'd say the range typically falls between $4,000 and $7,000 is about where the average biography falls. And those are pretty elaborate for that.
And how long would that be? What could I get of my life for $5,000?
I'd say about 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes with lots of footage and music. It's mostly the enhancement that takes all the time.
You'd have to enhance my life to get 45 good minutes out of it.
Give me your phone. I'll download all your pictures and then put it in there.
We're hearing how this works. This is very interesting. For example, now Anthony, you might need to make like a mini-series.
Well, for Bandit, it's funny because I was speaking to the gentleman earlier, and for Bandit's memorial, because we had people coming in and we had a guest list because we had a limit of how many people we could allow in, we wanted to do a slideshow, so it was like a montage also with narration, and we did it with photos of the guests that were there so they could feel included. It was telling stories of events that he was in, and so I have to tell you that when you have something like this in your possession, it's priceless. So the prices that he's quoting, they don't compare to what it's worth in the end. When you have a history of somebody's life, or like for instance, this was just Bandit, is a dog. Like most people say, that's just a dog. You want to know something? It was 8 years that I shared with the dog, and I could sit down and I could watch it again, and if it jerks a tear or two, so what? But you want to know something? It's a feel-good thing that you kept the history of that being.
Now, how often do people have these? I think yours is the only one that elaborate that I've been to, and considering the people that we know, and these are animal people, they don't go anywhere without a chihuahua in their pocket. So,
right. Well, the thing is that so many people came. I was very moved by the fact that secretly some of my co-workers from my other work came also without, they were told about it and they surprised me. But other than that, the most moving part was watching the dog people brought their dogs dressed in my designs. So it was like they were paying homage to Bandit's, inspiration. And they had a cake made specially for the dogs with Bandit's picture on it. And then they also had a cake for the people. And everybody got to say their farewell. And it was a very moving ceremony. And I would say that, it was pretty amazing.
Well, you picked a good place. I've had the people from Fetch Club on the show before. And they serve some excellent drinks. They have Bark&D.
Yes.
And they have White Sniff and Tail.
Yes.
And those are tasty. So Do they do a lot of those there? Do you know, or do you know other people that have done stuff like this? Or is this Bandit's kind of unique?
This was a first-time thing because, like I said, I was asked at the last minute to do this, and it's not something that I've heard a lot of. But a lot of people ask me that if I would assist them or give them advice for it in the future if they should want to do it, because they're loved ones also.
Okay, has that come up yet or no?
I have gotten a phone call, and I advise them just to keep it simple because it could get very expensive.
When I go, I'm letting you set things up. So that was a good party.
It was.
I want to be remembered at Fetch Club.
Oh, there you go.
Where all my friends hang out. Okay, we're actually going to go to a commercial break. And when we come back, we want to hear more about both of these topics. And Peter also has a moving tribute to Memorial Day that he'll be able to share with us, I believe. I was holding out. I didn't want to get into the whole memorial thing yet, but we will be back with that shortly. Okay, well, as a personal historian, we're going to use you on this Memorial Day to explain to us the history of Memorial Day. Give us a little tribute to this day.
Well, fresh from the pages of Wikipedia. No, I've known this for a little while. Memorial Day used to be called initially Decoration Day, and it began after the Civil War. In 1865, actually May 1st, 1865 was the first Decoration Day. The freed black slaves, now known as freedmen, had heard that during the...
So they were Jewish, basically?
No.
No.
During the Civil War, 257 Union soldiers had been kept in captivity as prisoners of war at a racetrack in Charleston, South Carolina, and they all died and were thrown into an unmarked grave.
Was that a race riot?
No, it was just the Civil War.
I got to get all my material out here.
It's okay. So they were thrown in unmarked graves. The freed black slaves decided they would clean it up, landscape it, and decorate it, and put flowers down. That was the first time it was celebrated. By 1870, the northern states had all adopted it as a federal holiday, as a state holiday, I should say, and mostly to be rancorous about the horrible slights of the South. But as time went on, that went away. During World War II, it was still called Decoration Day, but it was more to symbolize the American presence in the world, the fight for equality and liberty. And in 1967, they made it a federal holiday and changed it to Memorial Day, put it on May 30th. And then in 1968, they moved it with 3 other holidays to the last Monday in the month because it worked for 3-day weekends for federal employees.
This holiday gets around.
It gets around. So, and it's been there since then.
Okay. So it's where it's ended up in 1967. So it has a long history on the state.
1967 was when it was a federal holiday.
Okay, very good. That's a touching tribute. Okay. Anyway, Anthony.
I feel educated, by the way.
Good, as well you should. This show is educating.
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
Okay. I hope most people forget what they learn on it quickly, but...
Not bad.
Why are we here?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Memories.
Okay.
Memories.
Yes. Now, Anthony,
yes.
Obviously, we want to have some fun, but this is a serious topic. Now, you did lose your little guy, and what advice could you give people who are coping with a loss like that? First of
all, I would say that you have to be a realist. I'm one of I consider myself a realist where, you could sit down and boo-hoo and cry and carry on. And, I appreciated the fact that, first of all, fortunately at that situation, Bandit passed away quickly. It wasn't a prolonged thing where there were surgeries or like cancers or illnesses. It just happened all of a sudden. He had an injury and the doctors had administered medication he had a reaction to, and within 2 days, his health declined because he was up there in his years. He was an old guy already.
Do you know how old he actually was? Because you adopted him, right?
I adopted him. It was estimated that he was about 3 years when I got him, and I had him for 8 years. So do the math, and then in dog years. So he was a senior citizen already.
He was almost old enough to drink in legally in human years.
Yeah, I would say so.
If he could have hung on another 10 years, they would have taken him bar hop.
Well, he did go to a few clubs and bars with me, by the way, but that's beside the point. But the fact is that he lived a good life, and I was ready to let him go when he did, and it hurt. And the part was that, first of all, I was spooked because you tend to hear the noises in the house, and your imagination goes wild for a day or two. But then there were blessings that he sent me for all the things that I did for him. And probably one of your next questions is, what did I have next going on with any pets?
I know the answer to that, but share that with us.
Yes, the very same day that Bandit passed away, I got an email that someone that I had met a year earlier wanted to contact me, but a month later, so it seemed very mysterious. Now, also on the internet, I was getting offers left and right for adoptions for other dogs, but the surprise that came a month later was that I was offered a pedigreed Chihuahua from a breeder from Westminster who had heard the story, who had followed me on Facebook and fell in love with Bandit and my relationship with him and all the good things that he did. And to make a long story short, I ended up with not one but two Chihuahuas, twin brothers. One's named Boki, one is Kimba.
And the other one's named Ratone, I think.
And Kimba. And they both picked up where Bandit left off. The first day I got them, they were already in the press. They did a three-week stint for an off-Broadway show, and in February I was the first pet couturier to ever grace the runways of any fashion week. I did New York Fashion Week, and the boys were on the runway.
So is it safe to say that no one dog could replace Bandit?
No, it's a two.
It's a two.
But there's no replacement for Bandit, because Bandit always holds a special place in my heart.
Do they get along? Because I know my friend Grace, she's got two battling Yorkies. We actually had them on the show once with a dog whisperer trying to mediate.
She happens to be a very good friend of mine and one of my best clients, by the way. Her name is Grace Forster, from the television show Doggy Moms.
Yes.
And a wonderful lady. And yeah, she has a problem. Her two dogs do not get. She considers them sisters, even though they're from different breeds, from different breeders. But unfortunately, they fight. They would kill each other.
Someone just wrote in what are the puppies' names, and maybe she's a little behind. She said Boki?
Bogey, as in Humphrey.
Oh, Bogey.
Bogey, like Humphrey Bogart.
Okay.
He was named after Humphrey Bogart.
And what's the other little guy's name?
Kimba, because
Kimba, Bogey and Kimba.
because he was
Kind of a femme name.
Well, everybody thinks it's a girl when they see him, but it's after the story of the Kimba the White Lion, a cartoon that I saw growing up.
Okay. So he is a man's man, though.
Yes, he is.
Very good. Okay, now that's your field, obviously, pet fashion.
Yes.
Why don't you tell us a little about that? How did you get into that?
Well, again, because of Bandit's being my muse and inspiration, I started off with a few costumes here and there, and people came up to me and were asking me where I would get these things, and I told them I designed it myself. They started advising me to also get into the design for themselves. They would pay for it, and they didn't care what it would cost. Now, there are other pet designers out there. There are plenty, dime a dozen, but my specialty, that's why I'm a couturier, is that I use top quality materials. I do all the work myself. It's hand done. It's one of a kind. They're masterpieces. I'm inspired from everything from the top designers and couturiers in Europe.
So your Chihuahua's clothes are not made in Mexico?
No, they're not. And neither were they, for that matter. But the fact is that I make almost everything that they wear. They represent the line very nicely. And I've got a big following all over the world. I've got orders coming in from Barcelona, Australia. So, it's an industry, like I said, it's a $50 billion industry, and it's growing very fast.
So were you saying that you did not actually do this until you got Bandit? He was the inspiration.
Absolutely. I studied fashion design at FIT, New York's FIT, Fashion Institute of Technology. I studied women's wear, and I didn't like the field, and I went into education instead. 20 years later, when I got Bandit, all of a sudden here I was designing for not women, but for dogs.
So your mentor is a Chihuahua?
Yes.
Basically. That's very interesting. Do you have a mentor, by the way, Peter?
Can't say I do.
You can say that if you want. Come on.
Don't really, no. Just my son. My son was my inspiration.
Okay, so it's your son and his dog.
Yeah.
That's a very unusual show. All right, now, you did tell me an interesting anecdote where someone actually sort of benefited from the process of making one of your films. So tell us about
I had been hired by a client to interview their mother, and I went and visited her. Usually, at this time, I didn't pre-interview people. I would just show up with the camera. So I set the camera up, and I set up the lights, and the woman's sitting there smiling at me, and she goes, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I'm here to record your life story." She goes, "Oh, that's great. I'd look forward to seeing it. I can't remember a thing." And
so she actually knew that she... That's interesting. You don't generally hear Alzheimer's, people suffering from Alzheimer's speaking like that about it. So she was well aware that
she didn't remember it. So I walked into the kitchen where the client had hired me. I said, "Does your mother have Alzheimer's?" She said, "Well, we think so. We're not sure. That's why we want you to get her story."
So they don't know much either.
Well, it's early onset, I guess. So,
the whole family.
So I go back out, and I'm sitting there twisting my head. I say, "Could you tell me your name?" I said, "Would you tell me what you did today?" I'm thinking, "Oh my God, this is it. It's not going to work. I'm going to have to give the deposit deposit back. I notice she keeps eating a blueberry muffin. So I say, what is that you're doing? She says, oh, that's my blueberry muffin. I love blueberries. I said, really? Why is that? She says, well, my husband and I used to fly up to Cape and we would pick blueberry, and the story just started to come out. And for the next 10 or 15 minutes, she would just go off on all these memories. And then she'd click back in and forget again. And I'd have to bring it back through something she knew or liked, whether it's food or something about her husband, something that she connected with personally, and the story would come back out again. And the family even told me afterwards that for months afterwards, she was as spry as a spring chicken, was healthy and remembered everything. Unfortunately, now she has been put into a retirement home and doesn't remember anything anymore, but for a long time she did.
You're good at this stuff. I'm going to let you interview me. I might start remembering what I've done.
I have interviewed you. Did you remember?
No.
See?
You see.
My God. I thought you were better than this. Come on.
Andy, do you want to remember?
Maybe.
That's the thing.
I got to know what it is first. That's the problem, actually. So, you brought up an interesting point. Have you ever had someone who you were supposed to work with and you tried to say, this isn't working, here's your deposit back?
Well, I've had a couple of difficult clients. I did one codography where the father kept telling me, don't tell my children what to say and what to do, and because they kept playing with the microphone. And I said, if you do that, I'm going to hear bad sound. He didn't like that. No, for the most part, people are, once they realize this is it, this is the chance to really speak your piece, they come around.
Now, how far are you willing to travel to make one of these things? I guess it kind of depends on what they want to pay, but in general.
It's the cost of airfare, usually. I mean, I've gone nationwide to do this.
Where's the farthest you've gone?
California.
You have no international?
No, I've had a few clients that said, well, I've got my father lives in France, we wonder if you'd fly over, but they just haven't made the commitment yet.
No Chihuahua breeders in Tijuana as yet.
After this conversation, though, we'll be surprised.
Yeah, you're learning about the majesty of the noble Chihuahua.
Yes.
So, Anthony, what do you have coming up? Because I know you're involved in a lot of events, right?
I do a lot of fundraisers. I do a lot of appearances. I was just awarded a humanitarian award by the New Rochelle Humane Society, which was a wonderful honor. I'm designing and preparing for the next New York Fashion Week. I'm constantly sewing. I'm constantly preparing and experimenting with new concepts and ideas. So the sky's the limit.
What does these summer fashions look like for dogs?
I knew you were going to go there. I like to keep a lot of my work private because there are competitors who will try to be. Let me tell you something. It's just as catty as the people's fashion industry. So
it's dog eat dog.
Yeah, exactly. But I will tell you that I'm working on some inspirations from a movie that's going to be coming out, which is based on a famous American novel.
Okay, that's a little mysterious. You're going to be doing Huck Finn or something?
No, that's not very fashionable, but you'll see soon enough.
Okay, we're going to once again go to a commercial break. My favorite part of the show, where I can do some drinking. So except I don't have a drink. I got to get a drink. We'll be back. Thank you. I am a lush. Proud of that. Thank you.
Well, the business did start out as a biography business, tied in with the kidography as well, since that was the next thing I did after I did my first biography. But then I'd have people come to me and ask me, well, can you do this and can you do that? So the company needed to expand to collect stories as needed. Tributes, we did for a while. We offered passion tales, which were bride and groom before they get married. Talk about how did you know they were the one, how many kids you're going to have, where do you see yourself in 10 years, and you play this at the rehearsal dinner or the reception, and it unites the two families, allows them to learn about each other's movie.
Anthony's clients might be interested in passion tales. What do you think?
I would absolutely think so.
Different spelling.
Oh, okay. Well, that was never my strong suit. That and penmanship are rather weak. So you can't tell that I can't spell, because you can't read it anyway. The perfect crime. Okay. So, and what else do you do? In what direction do you see your business going? Do you see anything changing, or?
Well, the number one comment I get from my clients is, first thing they say is, oh wow, I didn't know this type of service existed. I wish I'd known about it when my grandmother, my grandfather, somebody was alive. And then the next question is, how do you get involved? What does it entail? What do you do? How long does it take? How much does it cost? I'd like to get this to a point where it's past the tipping point. I don't think there's enough awareness of the availability of these services. I'm a member of the Association of Personal Historians, and it's an international assortment of people that create video, audio, books, creating heritage, documentaries, biographies, any type of capturing stories.
Sounds like an interesting organization. I've never heard about this. Tell us a little bit more. What do you guys do?
Well, it's just a group of people who have...
Does this group have much of a history?
Well, they have the same passion. They have the same desire to realize, people, you get born, you go to school, you get a job, you find.
Or in my case, you get born.
You get born, right?
That's pretty much
get shoved out. You spend your whole life working for the right career, the right job. You get the money, and then you hit a certain age, and you basically get just pushed off for the next generation. And I just find it surprising that there isn't a rite of passage at a certain age that your story gets preserved, and even in the most rudimentary form for the next generation. So I'd like to get the word out more that we shouldn't just live in a singular direction thinking only in the forward, that there should be some time spent preserving and honoring those who have come before us.
I know that with Jewish girls at 13 you've got a choice of a nose job or what's the other, or electrolysis. Maybe it'll be one of these movies next.
Well,
I don't know if you want to get it done before the nose job though.
Don't know.
Maybe this will be at 14 then.
14.
After the black eyes go away. Okay. Now, Robert, what do you see coming up for you? What else is going on? There's always a lot of stuff.
I've got a fundraiser coming up. Celebrity Catwalk is doing something called Penthouse Pause by Columbus Circle on June 7th. Anyone who's interested could look it up on their celebritycatwalk.com. One of the guests from the Housewives of New York, Sonia Morgan, among the celebrities that are going. I went to it last year, worked with them last year. A few celebrities showed up. They have raffles and a really fun event at a very classy place.
Do you use clothing for cats as well?
I do clothing for cats. It's no different than the dogs. They're four-legged creatures.
Are they cooperative? Cats kind of have a mind of their own.
It depends, yeah. The cats are a little more difficult.
Well, fortunately, you had Bandit, who had a little bit of a strong personality, so
but
did that help you?
He didn't scratch or bite like cats do.
Really? Do you have any war wounds to show for your cat history?
No, not yet.
Now, what's the most unusual animal you've made something for? You have, like, ferrets or Gila monsters or anything?
No, I refuse to go any further than the domesticated animals. There are other people who will design for other kinds of animals, but I'll just stick with cats and dogs.
No orangutans for you?
I just got a text that both my dogs are listening to the show.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Do they have any questions? Because they can text me.
I'll see when I get back.
Peter's dogs, text me any questions or comments you have. What sort of fashion would your dogs look good in? What kind of dogs are we talking about?
I've got a Pomeranian and a Collie Shepherd, both very furry dogs, so it'd have to be strapped.
Something strapped on like a harness, that type of thing. Yeah.
That's what I was just going to ask you. How does the fashion sense differ for the style of the dog?
Well, basically, with the history of the whole thing, with the Chihuahuas in particular, she's showing me pictures. Gorgeous dog.
Oh,
the kid is adorable too. The dog breeds, the Chihuahua, known for being cold a lot of the time, and that's why they have the shakes all the time. So what happened is that
that's because they're cold and not nervous.
That too. And when you take them outdoors, they need that extra coat of protection, and so that's when the clothing started coming into play. But the short-haired dogs would get more clothing, and also the small dogs, because it looks kind of silly if you put a large breed dog in a shirt or jacket. It tends to look like he's borrowing it from the owner, so it kind of looks awkward.
Yeah, my dogs always wore some of my clothes, and I wore some of theirs.
Oh, I saw yours with one of your boxers one day down Mulberry Street.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there are some good boxers here in Little Italy, so. Yeah. So, okay. What's the outfit you'd say that you were the proudest of, or the most unusual outfit you've created?
Well, Bandit had personas. I used to dress them like famous people, so I think that the most famous was the first one was Elvis the King.
He had an Elvis costume.
Yes, he did.
Did he have the little pompadour and stuff? Because they're kind of short in the hair department.
He was short in the hair, but he made up with the Elvis glasses that I got from him in Las Vegas, and they were authentic replicas of the Elvis glasses. And he had an Elvis guitar with an Elvis signature on it. Huh. And then he also did Michael Jackson, which was another big prize winner for him. So.
A little bark me tender, basically.
There you go. Hound dog. There you go.
Very nice. Ain't nothing but a hound dog. That's good. All right, you're hired. So, what would you say the direction of your business is going? I mean, I know you said some of the things you'd like to see happen, but has the economy been good to you, by the way? That's a good question.
Probably not. I started a business that nobody really needs at the time when everybody needed more money. So it's not probably the best time to launch this, but I've been finding that the clients that really care come out regardless of the economy. So it's hard to tell exactly, but I don't think it's affected me that much.
Now, you've gotten a lot of press coverage, and I saw a bunch of stuff on your site. Your site is, let's share that with the people.
Timestories.com.
That's not hard to remember, and spelled normally, I assume. No Z's in there or anything.
No Y apostrophe S. It's R-I-E-S. Yeah.
But this is not like rap music.
No.
No, good. Okay, now, so Time Stories, what direction do you see this heading?
Well,
what's your goal? I know your goal.
My goal is, as I said, to get this to become more common, to make more of a rite of passage, that people actually take the time to. The number one complaint I hear is I'm too busy and I already know all the stories and we'll get it later. And there really is no later. I'd say 50% of the clients that I've worked with have come to me after someone had died, saying, I know I was dragging my feet when my father or mother was still alive, but now they've passed on. What can we do?
They're not as talkative as they used to be, but can you still do the film?
Now it's more of a documentary. And I say, you hold all the memories now. You hold the bits and pieces. It's up to you to put it back together. So earlier than later, every age has a story to tell. Get it while you have the story.
Do you have another cool story you can share with us from your field?
There's one I heard at a conference at the Association of Personal Historians. I'd love to say it was mine, but it's not. But it is a pretty cool story. This biographer was interviewing a woman, saying, now, the whole family knows your story. Everyone's heard your story, but I'm determined to find one thing that they don't know about. Tell me, how did you meet your husband? And this was a frail 95-year-old woman who sat there and said, well, me and the girls were swimming in the farmer's pond, and the dog started barking, so the farmer came out with a shotgun, fired it 3 times in the air. The girls were so scared we ran through the cornfield without our clothes. We came out on Highway Route 123. I flagged down the first car I could see. It was the most embarrassing day of my life. And then the biographer relates that from the other room with an oxygen tank, he pulls it away from his mouth. He goes, yeah, but it was the best day of my life.
I read about this in Penthouse Letters. Good night. This is very good. Okay.
You had to be there.
By the way, I'm feeling a lot better than I was at that time, just so you know, so I'm breathing on my own, getting around okay. All right, Anthony, what's your contact info? How do people get a hold of you if they're looking for a sweater for their Pekingese?
Well, I'm more about the couture designs, gowns, and that type of thing for weddings and for special occasions and for portraits, because now the dogs are considered part of the family and it's an extension of the family. So if you're going to dress up the family for the portrait, they want the dog to dress also. But I could be located at facebook.com. You could punch in the browser Anthony Bandit Rubio, R-U-B-I-O, or you can go follow me on Twitter. I have a lot of people following me on Twitter under Anthony Rubio01, and I also have a site, www.banditrubio.com.
Yeah, I don't know if we're Twittered together, Anthony.
You have to follow.
You do not tweet at me, ever. I am andytroyd.com if anyone wants anything. That's spelled out. ANDYTROYDOTCOM. Thought that was creative.
Yes, it was.
But, what do I know? Okay, and actually someone wrote in that they wanted your website again.
The website is timestories.com, T-I-M-E, stories, S-T-O-R-I-E-S.
Are you in the middle of working on someone's project now?
I'm creating a documentary, specifically a woman who said, my father is getting older, I want to get his story, but not now. And then I didn't hear from her for a year, and she called me and said, all right, he's passed away, but it's killing me, literally, to not have his story, and his photos are just languishing in the basement.
Is his name Dorian? What is it, Gray?
Gray?
No, that's the attic, I think.
Ciro di Cepolo.
Okay. Now, what sort of field are most of these people in that you end up working with? Is there any kind of common thread?
No, there really isn't. I mean, I thought at first it would only be high net worth individuals because, again, this is somewhat of a luxury item. It's not something everyone goes for, but I've been finding better stories and more passion comes from, I hate to use the word, common folk.
That's my song. Don't scoff at my song, Peter.
I'm not.
It was my band's single from 1985, Yes, I Am Old.
Bang.
Okay, we had a good show this week. Next week we are back with Duke Ellington's granddaughter, among other people. It'll be a very exciting show. Thanks for listening. Happy Memorial Day. But for now, like unfortunately many of our servicemen, we're gone.